Book 7, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Brown. The Aeneid, by Publius Virgilius Maro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 7. Juno served by a Fury, Part 1. And thou, O matron of immortal fame, Here dying, to the shore hast left thy name. Cajeta still the place is call'd from thee, The nurse of great Aeneas' infancy. Here rest thy bones in rich Hesperia's plains; Thy name, 'tis all a ghost can have, remains. Now, when the prince her fun'ral rites had paid, He plow'd the Tyrrhene seas with sails display'd. From land a gentle breeze arose by night; Serenely shone the stars, the moon was bright, And the sea trembled with her silver light. Now near the shelves of Circe's shores they run, Circe the rich, the daughter of the sun. A dangerous coast, the goddess wastes her days In joyous songs; the rocks resound her lays. In spinning or the loom she spends the night, And cedar brands supply her father's light. From hence were heard rebellowing to the main The roars of lions that refuse the chain, The grunts of bristled boars, the groans of bears, And herds of howling wolves that stun the sailors' ears. These from their caverns, at the close of night, Fill the sad isle with horror and affright. Darkling they mourn their fate, whom Circe's pow'r, That watch'd the moon and planetary hour, With words and wicked herbs from humankind Had alter'd, and in brutal shapes confin'd. Which monsters, lest the Trojans' pious host Should bear, or touch upon th' enchanted coast, Propitious Neptune steer'd their course by night With rising gales that sped their happy flight. Supplied with these, they skim the sounding shore, And hear the swelling surges vainly roar. Now, when the rosy morn began to rise, And wav'd her saffron streamer thro' the skies; When Thetis blush'd in purple not her own, And from her face the breathing winds were blown; A sudden silence sate upon the sea, And sweeping oars with struggling urg'd their way. The Trojan, from the main, beheld a wood, Which thick with shades and a brown horror stood. Betwixt the trees the Tiber took his course, With whirlpools dimpled; and with downward force, That drove the sand along, he took his way, And roll'd his yellow billows to the sea. About him, and above, and round the wood, The birds that haunt the borders of his flood, That bath'd within, or bask'd upon his side, To tuneful songs their narrow throats applied. The captain gives command; the joyful train Glide thro' the gloomy shade, and leave the main. Now, Erato, thy poet's mind inspire, And fill his soul with thy celestial fire. Relate what Latium was, her ancient kings; Declare the past and state of things, When first the Trojan fleet Ausonia sought, And how the rivals lov'd, and how they fought. These are my theme; and how the war began, And how concluded by the godlike man. For I shall sing of battles, blood, and rage, Which princes and their people did engage; And haughty souls, that, mov'd with mutual hate, In fighting fields pursued and found their fate; That rous'd the Tyrrhene realm with loud alarms, And peaceful Italy involv'd in arms. a larger scene of action is display'd, and, rising hence, a greater work is weigh'd. Latinus, old and mild, had long possess'd the Latin scepter, and his people bless'd. His father Faunus, a Laurentian dame; his mother, fair Marica was her name. But Faunus came from Picus; Picus drew his birth from Saturn, if records be true. Thus King Latinus, in the third degree, Had Saturn author of his family. But this old peaceful prince, as Heav'n decreed, Was bless'd with no male issue to succeed. His sons in blooming youth were snatch'd by fate; One only daughter heir'd the royal state. Fir'd with her love, and with ambition led, The neighb'ring princes court her nuptial bed. Among the crowd, but far above the rest, Young Turnus to the beauteous maid address'd. Turnus, for high descent and graceful mien, Was first, and favour'd by the Latian queen. With him she strove to join Lavinia's hand, But dire portents the purpos'd match withstand. Deep in the palace, of long growth, there stood A laurel's trunk, a venerable wood, Where rites divine were paid; whose holy hair Was kept and cut with superstitious care. This plant Latinus, when his town he wall'd, Then found, and from the tree Laurentum call'd. And last, in honour of his new abode, He vow'd the laurel to the laurel's god. It happen'd once, a boding prodigy, A swarm of bees that cut the liquid sky, Unknown from whence they took their airy flight, Upon the topmost branch in clouds alight. There with their clasping feet together clung, And a long cluster from the laurel hung. An ancient augur prophesied from hence: "Behold, on Latian shores a foreign prince! From the same parts of heav'n his navy stands, To the same parts on earth his army lands. The town he conquers, and the tow'r commands." Yet more, when fair Lavinia fed the fire Before the gods, and stood beside her sire, Strange to relate, the flames, involv'd in smoke Of incense from the sacred altar broke, Caught her dishevel'd hair and rich attire; Her crown and jewels crackled in the fire; From thence the fuming trail began to spread, And lambent glories danc'd about her head. This new portent the seer with wonder views, Then, pausing, thus his prophecy renews: "The nymph, who scatters flaming fires around, Shall shine with honour, shall herself be crown'd; But, caus'd by her irrevocable fate, War shall the country waste, and change the state." Latinus, frighted with this dire ostent, For counsel to his father Faunus went, And sought the shades, renown'd for prophecy, Which near Albunia's sulph'rous fountain lie. To these the Latian and the Sabine land Fly, when distress'd, and thence relief demand. The priest on skins of off'rings takes his ease, And nightly visions in his slumber sees. A swarm of thin aerial shapes appears, And, flutt'ring round his temples, deafs his ears. These he consults, and the future fates to know, From pow'rs above, and from the fiends below. Here for the gods' advice Latinus flies, Off'ring 100 sheep for sacrifice. Their woolly fleeces, as the rites requir'd, He laid beneath him, and to rest retir'd. No sooner were his eyes in slumber bound, When from above a more than mortal sound Invades his ears, and thus the vision spoke: "Seek not my seed in Latian bands to yoke. our fair Lavinia, nor the gods provoke. A foreign son upon thy shore descends, whose martial fame from pole to pole extends. His race, in arms and arts of peace renown'd, not Latium shall contain, nor Europe bound. 'Tis theirs, whate'er the sun surveys around." These answers, in the silent night receiv'd, The king himself divulg'd; the land believ'd. The fame thro' all the neighb'ring nations flew, When now the Trojan navy was in view. Beneath a shady tree the hero spread His table on the turf, with cakes of bread, And with his chiefs on forest fruits he fed. They sate, and not without the gods' command. Their homely fare dispatch'd, the hungry band Invade their trenchers next, and soon devour, To mend the scanty meal, their cakes of flour. Ascanius thus observ'd, and smiling said: "See, we devour the plates on which we fed." The speech had omen, that the Trojan race Should find repose, and this the time and place. Aeneas took the word, and thus replies, Confessing fate with wonder in his eyes: "All hail, O earth! all hail, my household gods! Behold the destin'd place of your abodes: For thus Anchises prophesied of old, And this our fatal place of rest foretold, When, on a foreign shore, instead of meat, By famine forc'd, your trenchers shall you eat. Then ease your weary Trojans will attend, And the long labours of your voyage end. Remember on that happy coast to build, And with a trench inclose the fruitful field. This was that famine, this the fatal place, Which ends the wand'ring of our exil'd race. Then on tomorrow's dawn your care employ, To search the land, and where the cities lie, And what the men: but give this day to joy. Now pour to Jove, and after Jove is blest, Call great Anchises to the genial feast. Crown high the goblets with a cheerful draught. Enjoy the present hour, adjourn the future thought." Thus having said, the hero bound his brows With leafy branches, then perform'd his vows, Adoring first the genius of the place, Then Earth, the mother of the heav'nly race. The nymphs, and native godheads yet unknown, In night, and all the stars that gild her sable throne; The ancient Cybele, and Idaean Jove, And last his sire below, and mother queen above. Then heav'n's high monarch thunder'd thrice aloud, And thrice he shook aloft a golden cloud. Soon thro' the joyful camp a rumour flew, The time was come their city to renew. Then ev'ry brow with cheerful green is crown'd, The feasts are doubled, and the bowls go round. When next the rosy morn disclos'd the day, The scouts to sev'ral parts divide their way, To learn the natives' names, their towns explore, The coasts and trendings of the crooked shore. Here Tiber flows, and here Numicus stands; Here warlike Latins hold the happy lands. The pious chief, who sought by peaceful ways To found his empire, and his town to raise, 100 youths from all his train selects, And to the Latian court their course directs, The spacious palace where their prince resides, And all their heads with wreaths of olive hides. They go commission'd to require a peace, And carry presents to procure access. Thus, while they speed their pace, the prince designs His new elected seat, and draws the lines. The Trojans round the place a rampire cast, And palisades about the trenches plac'd. Meantime the train, proceeding on their way, From far the town and lofty towers survey. At length approach the walls. Without the gate They see the boys and Latian youth debate. the martial prizes on the dusty plain. Some drive the cars, and some the coursers rein; Some bend the stubborn bow for victory, And some with darts their active sinews try. A posting messenger, dispatch'd from hence, Of this fair troop advis'd their aged prince: That foreign men of mighty stature came, Uncouth their habit, and unknown their name. The king ordains their entrance, and ascends His regal seat, surrounded by his friends. A palace, built by Picus, vast and proud, Supported by 100 pillars stood, And round encompass'd with a rising wood. The pile o'erlook'd the town, and drew the sight, Surpris'd at once with reverence and delight. There kings receiv'd the marks of sov'reign pow'r; In state the monarchs march'd; the lictors bore Their awful axes, and the rods before. Here the tribunal stood, the house of pray'r, And here the sacred senators repair. All at large tables, in long order set, A ram their off'ring, and a ram their meat. Above the portal, carv'd in cedar wood, Plac'd in their ranks, their godlike grandsires stood: Old Saturn with his crooked scythe on high, And Italus, that led the colony, And ancient Janus with his double face, And bunch of keys, the porter of the place. There good Sabinus, planter of the vines, On a short pruning hook his head reclines, And studiously surveys his gen'rous wines. Then warlike kings, who for their country fought, And honourable wounds from battle brought. Around the posts hung helmets, darts, and spears, And captive chariots, axes, shields, and bars, And broken beaks of ships, the trophies of their wars. Above the rest, as chief of all the band, Was Picus plac'd, a buckler in his hand; His other wav'd a long divining wand. Girt in his Gaban gown the hero sate, Yet could not with his art avoid his fate; For Circe long had lov'd the youth in vain, Till love, refus'd, converted to disdain. Then mixing pow'rful herbs with magic art, She chang'd his form, who could not change his heart; Constrain'd him in a bird, and made him fly, With party colour'd plumes a chatt'ring pie. In this high temple, on a chair of state, The seat of audience, old Latinus sate, And gave admission to the Trojan train. And thus with pleasing accents he began: "Tell me, ye Trojans, for that name you own, Nor is your course upon our coasts unknown. Say what you seek, and whither were you bound? Were you by stress of weather cast aground? Such dangers as on seas are often seen, And oft befall to miserable men. Or come, your shipping in our ports delay, Spent and disabled in so long a way. Say what you want; the Latians you shall find, Not forc'd to goodness, but by will inclin'd. For since the time of Saturn's holy reign, His hospitable customs we retain. I call to mind (but time the tale has worn) Th' Aurunci told, that Dardanus, Tho' born on Latian plains, yet sought the Phrygian shore, And Samothracia, Samos call'd before. From Tuscan Coritum he claim'd his birth, But after, when exempt from mortal earth, From thence ascended to his kindred skies, A god, and, as a god, augments their sacrifice." He said. Ilioneus made this reply: "O king of Faunus' royal family, Nor wintry winds to Latium forc'd our way, Nor did the stars our wand'ring course betray. Willing we sought your shores, and hither bound, The ports, so long desir'd, at length we found, from our sweet homes and ancient realms expell'd, Great as the greatest that the sun beheld. The god began our line, who rules above; And, as our race, our king descends from Jove. And hither are we come, by his command, To crave admission in your happy land. How dire a tempest from Mycenae pour'd Our plains, our temples, and our town devour'd! What was the waste of war? What fierce alarms Shook Asia's crown with European arms! Ev'n such have heard, if such there be, Whose earth is bounded by the frozen sea, And such as, born beneath the burning sky And sultry sun, betwixt the tropics lie. From that dire deluge, thro' the wat'ry waste, Such length of years, such various perils past, At last escap'd, to Latium we repair, To beg what you, without your want, may spare: The common water, and the common air; Sheds, which ourselves will build, and mean abodes, Fit to receive and serve our banish'd gods. Nor our admission shall your realm disgrace, Nor length of time our gratitude efface. Besides, what endless honour you shall gain, To save and shelter Troy's unhappy train! Now by my sov'reign and his fate I swear, Renown'd for faith in peace, for force in war. Oft our alliance other lands desir'd, And what we seek of you, of us requir'd. Despite not then, that in our hands we bear These holy boughs, sue with words of pray'r. Fate and the gods, by their supreme command, Have doom'd our ships to seek the Latian land. To these abodes our fleet Apollo sends; Here Dardanus was born, and hither tends, Where Tuscan Tiber rolls with rapid force, And where Numicus opes his holy source. Besides, our prince presents, with his request, Some small remains of what his sire possess'd: This golden charger, snatch'd from burning Troy, Anchises did in sacrifice employ; This royal robe and this tiara wore Old Priam, and this golden scepter bore In full assemblies, and in solemn games. These purple vests were weav'd by Dardan dames. Thus while he spoke, Latinus roll'd around His eyes, and fix'd a while upon the ground. Intent he seem'd, and anxious in his breast, Not by the scepter mov'd, or kingly vest, But pond'ring future things of wondrous weight, Succession, empire, and his daughter's fate. On these he mus'd within his thoughtful mind, And then revolv'd what Faunus had divin'd. This was the foreign prince, by fate decreed To share his scepter, and Lavinia's bed. This was the race that sure portents foreshew To sway the world, and land and sea subdue. At length he rais'd his cheerful head, and spoke: "The pow'rs," said he, "the pow'rs we both invoke, To you, and yours, and mine, propitious be, And firm our purpose with their augury. Have what you ask; your presents I receive; Land, where and when you please, with ample leave. Partake, and use my kingdom as your own; All shall be yours, while I command the crown. And, if my wish'd alliance please your king, Tell him he should not send the peace, but bring. Then let him not a friend's embraces fear; The peace is made when I behold him here. Besides this answer, tell my royal guest, I add to his commands my own request. One only daughter heirs my crown and state, Whom not our oracles, nor heav'n, nor fate, Nor frequent prodigies permit to join With any native of th' Ausonian line. A foreign son in law shall come from far; Such is our doom, a chief renown'd in war, whose race shall bear aloft the Latian name, And thro' the conquer'd world diffuse our fame. Himself to be the man the fates require, I firmly judge, and, what I judge, desire." He said, and then on each bestow'd a steed. 300 horses, in high stables fed, Stood ready, shining all, and smoothly dress'd. Of these he chose the fairest and the best, To mount the Trojan troop. At his command the steeds caparison'd with purple stand, With golden trappings, glorious to behold, And champ betwixt their teeth the foaming gold. Then to his absent guests the king decreed A pair of coursers, born of heav'nly breed, Who from their nostrils breath'd ethereal fire, Whom Circe stole from her celestial sire, By substituting mares produc'd on earth, Whose wombs conceiv'd a more than mortal birth. These draw the chariot which Latinus sends, And the rich present to the prince commends. Sublime on stately steeds the Trojans borne, To their expecting lord with peace return. But jealous Juno, from Pachynus' height, As she from Argos took her airy flight, Beheld with envious eyes this hateful sight. She saw the Trojan and his joyful train Descend upon the shore, desert the main, Design a town, and with unhop'd success Th' ambassadors return with promis'd peace. Then, pierc'd with pain, she shook her haughty head, Sigh'd from her inward soul, and thus she said: "O hated offspring of my Phrygian foes! O fates of Troy, which Juno's fates oppose! Could they not fall unpitied on the plain, But slain revive, and taken 'scape again? When execrable Troy in ashes lay, Thro' fires and swords and seas they forc'd their way. Then vanquish'd Juno must in vain contend, Her rage disarm'd, her empire at an end. Breathless and tir'd, is all my fury spent? Or does my glutted spleen at length relent? As if 'twere little from their town to chase, I thro' the seas pursued their exil'd race, Engag'd the heavens, oppos'd the stormy main, But billows roar'd, and tempests rag'd in vain. What have my Scyllas and my Syrtes done? When these they overpass, and those they shun, On Tiber's shores they land, secure of fate, Triumphant o'er the storms and Juno's hate. Mars could in mutual blood the Centaurs bathe, And Jove himself gave way to Cynthia's wrath, Who sent the tusky boar to Calydon. What great offence had either people done? But I, consort of the Thund'rer, Have wag'd a long and unsuccessful war, With various arts and arms in vain have toil'd, And by a mortal man at length am foil'd. If native pow'r prevail not, shall I doubt To seek for needful succour from without? If Jove and Heav'n my just desires deny, Hell shall the pow'r of Heav'n and Jove supply. Grant that the fates have firm'd by their decree The Trojan race to reign in Italy. At least I can defer the nuptial day, And with protracted wars the peace delay. With blood the dear alliance shall be bought, And both the people near destruction brought. So shall the son in law and father join, With ruin, war, and waste of either line. O fatal maid, thy marriage is endow'd With Phrygian, Latian, and Rutulian blood. Bellona leads thee to thy lover's hand; Another queen brings forth another brand, To burn with foreign fires another land. A second Paris, diff'ring but in name, Shall fire his country with a second flame." Thus having said, she sinks beneath the ground With furious haste, and shoots the Stygian sound, To rouse Alecto from th' infernal seat Of her dire sisters, and their dark retreat. This fury, fit for her intent, she chose; One who delights in wars and human woes. Ev'n Pluto hates his own misshapen race; Her sister Furies fly her hideous face. So frightful are the forms the monster takes, So fierce the hissings of her speckled snakes. Her Juno finds, and thus inflames her spite: "O virgin daughter of eternal night, Give me this once thy labour, to sustain My right, and execute my just disdain. Let not the Trojans, with a feign'd pretence Of proffer'd peace, delude the Latian prince. Expel from Italy that odious name, And let not Juno suffer in her fame. 'Tis thine to ruin realms, or turn a state, Betwixt the dearest friends to raise debate, And kindle kindred blood to mutual hate. Thy hand o'er towns the fun'ral torch displays, And forms 1,000 ills 10,000 ways. Now shake out thy fruitful breast the seeds Of envy, discord, and of cruel deeds. Confound the peace establish'd, and prepare Their souls to hatred, and their hands to war." Smear'd as she was with black Gorgonian blood, The Fury sprang above the Stygian flood; And on her wicker wings, sublime thro' night, She to the Latian palace took her flight. There sought the queen's apartment, stood before The peaceful threshold, and besieg'd the door. Restless Amata lay, her swelling breast Fir'd with disdain for Turnus dispossess'd, And the new nuptials of the Trojan guest. From her black bloody locks the Fury shakes Her darling plague, the fav'rite of her snakes. With her full force she threw the poisonous dart, And fix'd it deep within Amata's heart, That thus envenom'd she might kindle rage, And sacrifice to strife her house husband's age. Unseen, unfelt, the fiery serpent skims Betwixt her linen and her naked limbs, His baleful breath inspiring, as he glides. Now like a chain around her neck he rides, Now like a fillet to her head repairs, And with his circling volumes folds her hairs. At first the silent venom slid with ease, And seiz'd her cooler senses by degrees. Then, ere th' infected mass was fir'd too far, In plaintive accents she began the war, And thus bespoke her husband: "Shall," she said, "a wand'ring prince enjoy Lavinia's bed? If nature plead not in a parent's heart, Pity my tears, and pity her desert. I know, my dearest lord, the time will come You in vain reverse your cruel doom. The faithless pirate soon will set to sea, And bear the royal virgin far away. A guest like him, a Trojan guest before, In shew of friendship sought the Spartan shore, And ravish'd Helen from her husband bore. Think on a king's inviolable word, And think on Turnus, her once plighted lord. To this false foreigner you give your throne, And wrong a friend, a kinsman, and a son. Resume your ancient care; and if the god Your sire, and you, resolve on foreign blood, Know all are foreign, in a larger sense, Not born your subjects, or deriv'd from hence. Then, if the line of Turnus you retrace, He springs from Inachus of Argive race." But, when she saw her reasons idly spent, And could not move him from his fix'd intent, She flew to rage; for now the snake possess'd Her vital parts, and poison'd all her breast. She raves, she runs with a distracted pace, And fills with horrid howls the public place. And as young striplings whip the top for sport, On the smooth pavement of an empty court, The wooden engine flies and whirls about, Admir'd with clamours of the beardless rout. They lash aloud, each other they provoke, And lend their little souls at ev'ry stroke. Thus fares the queen, and thus her fury blows Amidst the crowd, and kindles as she goes. Nor yet content, she strains her malice more, And adds new ills to those contriv'd before. She flies the town, and, mixing with a throng Of madding matrons, bears the bride along, Wand'ring thro' the woods in wiles and devious ways, And with these arts the Trojan match delays. She feign'd the rites of Bacchus, cried aloud, And to the buxom god the virgin vow'd: "Evoe, O Bacchus!" Thus began the song, And "Evoe!" answer'd all the female throng. "O virgin, worthy thee alone!" she cried. "O worthy thee alone!" the crew replied. For thee she feeds her hair, she leads thy dance, And with thy winding ivy wreathes her lance. Like fury seize the rest: the progress known, All seek the mountains, and forsake the town; All, clad in skins of beasts, the jav'lin bear, Give to the wanton winds their flowing hair, And shrieks and shoutings rend the suff'ring air. The queen herself, inspir'd with rage divine, Shook high above her head a flaming pine; Then roll'd her haggard eyes around the throng, And sung in Turnus' name the nuptial song: "O ye Latian dames, if any here Hold your unhappy queen Amata dear; If there be here," she said, "who dare maintain My right, nor think the name of mother vain, Unbind your fillets, loose your flowing hair, And orgies and nocturnal rites prepare." Book 7, Part 1. Recording by Alan Brown, Houston, Texas.